Hello there folks, this is Ferengi on board again, this time with a video regarding energy and, well, continuing my saga to provide people with the wisdom I have acquired throughout time. And, well, what can I say? Welcome to my YouTube channel, a channel in which I will keep providing wisdom on spirituality, introspection, and different things that people find confusing, giving more opinions about what people think there can only be one thing, and always finding, well, several other possible interpretations on different ideas that people usually get stuck in. Now, also in this channel I would like to underline the fact that I have concept aversion, which means I disregard what people have created through concepts, meaning little prisons of the mind in which they have created words, they gave them meaning but they forgot what they initially meant, and most of the situations people just use words brainlessly. They don't even know what those words actually mean, but, well, they just use them because, well, people are just like the sheep in most situations. If someone says something, everyone takes it, and no one ever thinks or wants to break down that idea and say, hey, you know what, like, this has been going for so long, is it actually really true? Because in the end we come here to experience our own truth, so how can someone else's truth be real? Now, of course, other people's truths can be real, but the truth is not something universal. Most likely, mathematics can be the only thing that can be called universal, because universal means that is applied to the whole universe, not to our planet only. Now, one illusion that I've been hearing all the time, and I simply break it down, the point about energy. So energy cannot be broken down, people say. Well, I could say quite the opposite. Now, the point is, we don't know what energy exactly is, but we know it cannot be broken down. Just because we don't have the technology to do it, it doesn't mean it cannot be broken down. Black holes can definitely break it down to the minuter parts that actually create it. And I'm not gonna dive into the ideas that, this world is a simulation or something like that, but I do know there is one thing. There is a universal code, or that's how I called it, that works behind all of this. And that is what I call the code of intelligence. Now, intelligence is the programming of this universe, which allows everything to exist and manifest the way it wants. Even free speech that we fight for, theoretically, free will, and whatever other, concepts regarding consciousness, those are still things that manifest based on a specific code, because the code works based on the vibration of awareness. Based on someone's awareness, their vibration increases or decreases along with awareness, and so does their perception, because awareness is actually nothing else than awareness. Awareness is perception, and perception is awareness. They are both one and the same. Now, energy cannot be destroyed because we don't have the technology to do it. Unfortunately, people blindly follow truths, and it's just a race of whoever runs more away from their own selves. Now, the point about the atom was, hey, up till a certain time, people said, hey, this is the smallest particle that cannot be divided, and guess what? Once we divided, everyone simply disregarded that and embraced the new norm. We don't know what the process of creation is, but stupidly thinking, we know how the creator actually looks, and we know they're a human, and they're also somewhat old, and they're white of skin, and it's like, dude, religion is nothing else than an embodiment of narcissism, okay? It actually says, don't create false gods, and guess what we have created? Now, we don't know what our brain works like, and I don't think we even know 5% of how it works, but we have becoming better and better at labeling people as mentally broken or whatever. That is why I also disregard psychology and psychiatry to a very great extent. So, given the fact that everything is kind of fake and we created things just because of a stupid wish to control things, we have just controlled ourselves and our power to create. We have created little and big prisons for ourselves in which now we reside happily and joyously and also proud. And guess what? Now we create and invent things for the masses to blindly follow, and in the end it's just a proof for me that no one actually cares about anything. So the point about energy is that it can actually be broken. We may not have the technology to do that, but energy is bound together in more compact material ways through, of course, the codes of universal intelligence. Okay? When something is created, even if it is what science, which is another thing I disregard, not entirely but to a great extent, science considers that life can only be biological, and of course, in school you learn that if it doesn't have metabolism, well, then it's not alive. And then comes the question, well, viruses don't have a metabolism, but they are alive. Of course, scientists call it, they call them undead or something like that, and why should I be dumb enough to call it undead? Everything is alive. Everything has a life. Just that it doesn't move the way you do and, manifest biologically the fact you do, well, that's your little awareness that tells you that, okay? I don't have to trust science because science is created by humans. Those scientists that people give power to, they are just simple humans. And they can be actually miserable humans because, miserable people will never ever be pleased. And once someone has worked in the field of science for 40 years and they haven't accomplished anything, because it doesn't mean that if you're a scientist you'll necessarily accomplish something, they need to create something or a lie or something like that so that their life doesn't look like shit when they are on their deathbed. Because one of the greatest problems people have is the energy vibration that they get stuck, and usually they get stuck in questions like, whatever I'm doing, is it good or is it bad? Okay, this is something that I will tackle in a different video. So energy can be broken, and if you ever come in this universe with the mentality that something cannot be done, with thinking that something cannot be done, well, you should probably become more introspective. And you will see that answers will pop up, but I do not promise that if someone becomes introspective, they'll necessarily get their own needed or much needed results. Introspection is something that takes time, and of course, depending on anyone, it depends on how much time they are willing to put. It also depends on other aspects that you might not have full control over, like your spiritual age and many other things. So to move further, energy can be broken down because energy is bound together by a code. If you have your table or whatever objects in your house, there is a great intelligence and a great code that actually keeps that energy bound together. And I assure you that thing is as alive as you are. How is that possible? Well, they actually have a metabolism because they feed themselves. All objects in your house, they actually have a life. They have a vibration. If you become capable of seeing at least the contour of auras, you will see that they actually move and they slightly change colors. If you become capable of seeing full-fledged auras, which are very big, and you'll see that they interlap, it is actually a way of communication in between objects, because they actually have their own life. Sure, to most people this will sound like psychiatry stuff, but as I said, the lower one's awareness, the more they will be willing to run away from themselves. And I am here to enlighten people, not accept stupid beliefs that, dumb people come up with. Because people who end up in the psychiatry or the psychology realms, they're still humans. There's nothing special about them. And if a human doesn't have at least my level of awareness, they're not allowed to label me in any way possible. Even if they have power over whatever they think they have, all that power is just in their heads, because they imagine they have power. All those people are in any field, in most situations, 90% of the situation, is just broken down people by traumas and other things, and boasting with at least slight narcissism and sociopathy. They believe that their life is about their own suffering being propelled onto the others. If they have suffered, everyone else must suffer as well. So the point is, with most scientists, psychologists, psychiatrists, is how much can you actually abuse your own power, okay, before the shit actually hits the fan. Now, the point with energy is indeed it can be broken. If you find out the code that keeps it together, well, most likely you will become like black holes, tearing that code apart. Is that good thing or bad thing? Well, there is no such thing as a good or bad thing. The point is, everything that happens for several reasons. Now, people don't understand that this code actually, when it is created, it is actually karma. Karma is memory, and it is the same thing as memory, and well, it is the way things are bound together. One's body is bound together, and it will have a certain shape, a certain set of features, based on the karma that it has been acquired. Okay? In order for someone to be born, they need to acquire a certain level of karma to create their own body. And they also carry their own, the karma of previous lives, but usually that is something that gets burned through irrespective. Of course, there are much more complicated things on here, and I'm not gonna dive into those. These are also fuzzy things that I don't entirely know things on, but okay. So, energy can be broken down because, well, it is only a source. It is a source that leads to the embodiment of material. Energy forms itself, it shapes itself into more compact things based on a code of existence. And those things actually have life. Energy is actually transferred from those objects. Just because you see it as a table and it doesn't move, it doesn't mean it doesn't have a life of its own. It seeds energy with the environment. It is actually impregnated with the energy emitted by people. When you create emotions in your life, okay, all the objects around you will get impregnated by that. The more you generate those emotions and think of the same ideas, the more powerful thought forms you can actually create, and those thought forms can be somewhat attached to those places. In certain cases, certain objects might get somewhat haunted by different things, especially if they were created in very great, situations, like very traumatic events, like for example when someone is killed and they really liked some objects in their house, and they had a fear that those objects will be stolen. Those fears actually can be in time generated as thought forms that become more and more aware the more they are thought of. Okay, the more someone concentrates on fear, well, especially after a certain level of awareness, the more powerful that entity can become. And don't think that it will become like some kind of super powerful wizard. It's just more and more gonna be, it's gonna be a bit more intrusive, okay? And the more karma that is put into it, especially through pain and suffering, the more visible and compact that being can become, because the more karma something has, the more compact it becomes, the more energy it has in it, and therefore it becomes more compact. The more compact it becomes more and more accessible to people who are sensitive, and well, it can become more and more accessible to less and less sensitive people. That can be something that's called a ghost. And those things don't seek anything else than a source that can actually turn them into purity. Now, purity is the natural state of beings and the natural state of being. Okay? An idea that is not fulfilled will always seek to become pure again, which means liberate itself from all the karmic shape it was given and become pure again. And this happens through dissipation. That is why everything actually dissipates in this universe. It's just that the process can be actually painfully slow. But even life in beings dissipates. A battery, if you store some energy in it, it still dissipates. It slowly loses that energy, even if it is never used. And this dissipation is actually a form of life. Every object around you actually loses some energy, and they actually receive some energy. There are atom and like electron exchanges in between that object and everything around it. And the pendulum effect also targets objects as well, namely what I spoke about previously. So the point is, everything is somewhat alive around you, and if you believe that energy cannot be broken down, well, you're kind of wrong. Just because we don't live enough to see energy being broken down, well, it doesn't mean that that thing doesn't happen. We are still expanding our own awareness as a race, so all these little petty, uh, useless little truths are kind of, should be taken as irrelevant because everything is possible in this universe, and one should instead think how that can actually be achieved instead of thinking that, oh no, that's not impossible, and using this as a pathetic excuse to not do anything regarding that. So energy can indeed be broken, but we do not have the technology to do it at subatomic levels. It's like when you break an object into pieces, that is a way of breaking down energy because you have led to the breaking down of the code that created that. Basically, when an object is broken, other entities are formed, and not necessarily spirit entities, but those can also be formed because you broke that with a certain manifestation. You had some rage, you had some unconsciousness, and that unconsciousness may have been induced by some beings, but let's not get too deep into this because it's not that important. So when you break an object into more pieces, it's like you actually broke some energy in there. Okay, you broke the material part of that, but you divided that energy in several smaller shapes, which is a minor way of actually breaking down energy. Now, energy at its highest forms can also be broken down. Spirits and entities, they actually break down. Okay, I don't know about higher level beings, but parasitic entities actually break down. They evaporate, which means their energy is always lost. They don't have a fully physical encasement, okay, which even if one actually has, like we have, okay, we have a physical body, but the life energy within us is still depleting slowly. To some it might be depleting faster because, well, the amount of life, the amount of days that one has to live is also dictated by their karma and also by the way they use their body. If you're using your body in a bad way, it might actually accelerate its, impending demise. Now, the point about energy is that even spirits can actually be broken down. They have a code that keeps them together. Their body is much more spiritual, much more non-physical indeed, but they still have a code that creates them. They still have a code that functions for their awareness and consciousness to exist. If you break those codes down, you simply break those spirits into bits, and you break those spirits into irrecuperable bits. But this is a mental technology that is very advanced, and it is so because not everyone should be bearing such a great power, okay? And this one also induces a lot of karma on you because the point is, such a power should only be used on the very few situations it was reserved for. What such situations would be, well, let's actually reach that level first, and we'll see about that. Because people have a stupid habit of actually imagining things and instantly turning them into reality, even if they don't have the technology to do that. People just imagine a lot of things and then they impose those as truths upon themselves. People don't know what black holes are or how they look like because they've never ever seen one. And you cannot see any one of those with technology that we have because they're not called black for nothing. Any picture of black holes that we see is just pictures of light around that, and people just interpret things. And just because an interpretation is done, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is true. Now, enough about this video. As usual, it was meant to be a eye-opener for people who want to become more introspective on this. And well, keep up the good work, take great care of yourselves. If you like this type of content that I'm creating, feel free to like and subscribe. I will post almost regularly. Usually I tend to post at least once per day, but at times I might not due to my not feeling good or working on something else. However, I will keep posting things about spirituality, introspection, and even the video game that I'm working on. Until next time, Ferenc on board. signing out.